All right, well, thank you for joining us. We're going to get going now, if that's okay, Michael. And we're going to talk about some more of the advanced features of production and more granular in terms of some of the preferences that are available to you to kind of help you out creating BoMs, bill of materials, and creating work orders in the most effective way. So we're going to be talking about some of these preferences here, which is part of the company under admin, part of company preferences, and then production. And by default, most of these are unchecked. And I'm going to start checking and unchecking one at a time so we can understand what we're doing. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a pretty straightforward preference called splitting. And the idea behind splitting is that I want to complete a partial work order and then finish it so I could release the stock and then complete the rest of the production at a later time. So that's what the splitting is all about. And you can see I have this work order. I've created this work order. I've allocated this work order. And I edited the work order and I added a quantity 2, which is one less than I actually need. I just want to finish those, the 2, and leave the last one for later on. And so once I do that, once I have at least some of the quantity produced, you'll see this split button appear. So once I have a little bit produced, we'll see the split button, and all I have to do is click split. And what it's going to add, the first thing it's going to ask me is that these quantities here, these are assuming that I'm creating 3. All right. So when it says, would you like to allocate the components proportionately? If I just want to leave all of these components in this work order, I would say cancel. If not, I would say okay. And say we're about to split, a new work order will be created. All right. And that's all there is to it. So now we have another work order. That other work order is still here. Okay, so it got finished off with the 2 units only. All right, and with the components that I needed for 2 units. And then it created another work order for the final amount. So is there anything wrong, Michael? Something going on?
Some people are showing up as unknown, but as long as they can still view the presentation and can send messages, it should be fine.
Okay. All right. So that is what splitting is all about. The next 2 are enable drill down and flatten, and those relate to what we call indented bill of materials. In other words, and I'm going to show you an example of an indented bill of materials. So this bill of materials here for N lot 3 has some components. So you see its components here. But it has a 4th component that is itself a bill of materials. How do I know that? Because I see this button that says Indented Bill of Materials. So I'm going to click that. And when I click that, I get this detail here about about the indented bill of materials, and it's just kind of more or less the same as this, except that it's expanding this, and you can see how the cost is built up. The multiplier is the same as basically the quantity per, and it can go recursively. So I could have for example, another bill of materials in N lot itself, and it'll recurse all the way down. Let's see if that works. 2 of those. All right, so you see how that works. So that is kind of the you know, the concept of an indented bill of materials. It basically means that a bill of materials is a component in another bill of materials. So when I have that situation, I can press the indented bill of materials and see that. So that's the bill of materials for Enlot. So in terms of what it means to flatten, it means that on a work order, to flatten a work order, meaning that I want to eliminate all the subassembly structure and just have the purchased components on my work order. That's what it means to flatten. So at the end of the day, I won't see end lot. I'll just see the components, or end lot 4, I'll just see those components that are in those bills of material. Now, in order to allow it to flatten, you need to make sure that the bill of material is what's called the bill of material is a phantom, okay? A phantom bill of materials. So end lot 2, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it a phantom, right? So that is already a phantom. I just checked that. All right. And then end lot 3, we're going to also make that a phantom, but I don't have to. Right? So it depends if you want to kind of eliminate the structure, then you would make it a phantom. Sorry, I'm going to make end lot 4 a phantom. My bill of materials. Okay, so we're going to make that one a phantom as well. All right, so now I'm going to do a work order for this one, which is the one that has the largest structure. So I'm just going to come in here and create a work order. All right, so I'll create that work order, and then I see this little button that says flatten. So what I would expect to see after I flatten is no more bills of material in the structure. So that's what the flatten will do. The other thing that we could do instead of flattening, so a flattening will create one work order. Instead of flattening, maybe we want to create a series of work orders. So that's what this is all about. And this one we can create what's called a drill down. Okay, so instead of flattening, we'll create a drill down, and it'll create our work orders. So there is a work order here. All right. Sorry, that's the work order. And so that's kind of the dependency structure. So one work order kind of goes into another work order. So it creates a series of work orders. And there is a column.
Sorry.
There's a column here called a drill down work order column, that when I do drill it down, the master work order is what's called the drill down work order. So that is Flatten and that. So in the Phantom BoM,
Yeah, before you left flattening, I wanted you to explain what a phantom BoM is. We got a question about that.
okay, is the Phantom BoM presumed to be one where you don't stock that item or produce it specifically? It's just a component of another BoM. Please define Phantom BoM. Well, a Phantom BoM is basically used to flatten, right? That's basically what we use the whole concept of flatten, Phantom BoM, right? So that it really, the only purpose of flattening, of a Phantom BoM is so we can use the flatten, and the flattening basically takes all the entire structure. So in itself, it's a BoM. You can create it just like any other bill of materials. But some companies like to create the entire structure, but when they actually build the work order, they don't need to build every single sub-assembly. So they would want to flatten it, and the Phantom BoM would be used in that particular. Now, could a Phantom BoM have stock? Yes, it could have stock, but generally it doesn't. Generally, it's just a structure, a bill of materials structure that you use for your management purposes, so you can delineate maybe a part number or whatnot. But that's what it's used for.
And I don't believe you can still flatten if you don't make phantom BoMs. That was a question in the chat.
Right.
Can you still flatten if you don't have? Yeah, you gotta have them.
You gotta have a Phantom BoM to flatten, otherwise nothing happens. Okay. And only Phantom BoMs flatten. If it's not a Phantom BoM, it won't flatten. Right. We're going to talk about the batch quantity. So in a bill of materials, when we create a bill of materials, we assume that each bill of materials has each bill of materials is a unitary. In other words, to make one of these products on a work order, this is the quantity per. Okay. In certain situations, however, it's kind of, you consistently make the same batch, right, over and over and over again. So this is actually the default batch quantity is 1, right? One of these represent, the quantity per. For some companies, especially if you're doing like formulations, it makes it hard to kind of back into the quantity per, and it becomes kind of a lot of decimal points and things like that. So the batch quantity would allow you to create a bill of materials. So we'll just do that real quick here. Allows you to create a bill of materials. Let's say the batch quantity is 100. And when I enter my components, the quantity per that I enter is actually per the 100 units. Okay? It's per the 100 units. Behind the scenes, we're still calculating the unitary cost. We're still calculating the unitary cost, but it just makes it a lot easier to enter your components without having to use decimal points. Okay, so that's what the batch. Now be careful. You know, if you change the batch quantity, it will affect the cost. So watch this, but it won't change any of this over here. It'll just see how the unit cost is a lot smaller. It won't change any of that. So that's what that's all about. That's the batch quantity. And when I do create a work order having the batch quantity, it'll all automatically populate instead of 1 what the batch quantity would be. Any questions on that? You can actually see now the unitary here. Alrighty, so that's that. Oops. BoM Revisions is a pretty powerful tool that enables you to create different versions of the same bill of materials. So in my N lot 4, all right, sorry, it's N lot 5. So you can see here N lot 5, there's 2 versions of the same bill of materials. One of them I call DIS because I want to use it in a disassembly. And the other one I call the default because I use that in a work order. But that's not, you can use it for a number of different purposes. You can use it for version numbers, you know, like version 1, version 2. So it's good for versioning, you know, your bill of materials, right? And if that bill of material is active, you click here, right? If you, for example, let's say you create now another version 2, you can make the first version inactive and make it default. So to create one, I just go create version 2. Let's say version 2. And then I check, yeah, create a copy of it. So it'll go ahead and do that now. And I can toggle back and forth between all my versions. Now, if I want to make version 1 the active, then I can go back to the first version and make it inactive. Okay? So when I create a work order, I'll see my active versions here. And on any work order, I can also see if I did create, if I did use the BoM revisions, which BoM revision the work order used. So that's very handy if you need to have the bill of materials, have multiple versions of the same bill of materials. Okay. Now, taking that a step further, some companies have a series of disassemblies and assemblies that kind of make up ultimately a structure, or ultimately, so they may, they may have a bunch of different work orders and and disassemblies that basically are part of a grouping. And that's what the production orders are all about. So once we enable the production orders, of course we need to have the BoM revisions, otherwise production orders have limited appeal. So once you have that, then you'll have what's called the BoM group. And the BoM group, this is an example I created. This BoM group, so I can add this. You just add the BoMs right here. So you add the item, and then whatever revision, and whether you want to create a work order or a disassembly from that, and the quantity per. Okay. So that's what that's all about. Then I can go to my I can go and create a production order and pick my BoM group and how many I want to prepare of ultimately the final item in that group. So it creates all the bills of material at the same time. Okay. So then when you have the bill of materials, kind of reversed here. You can move from one series. So now it'll take you to disassembly. Next one is the work order. And then once you finish this work order, you're finished the production order. So it kind of creates a series of work orders that you can process, and at the end you have the bill of materials in this particular case, or this finished good in this particular case. So that's what that is. That's what that is. All right. So I can open it up for some questions. Again, we went through some of the more like the splitting. The splitting is used for finishing part of a work order, creating automatically another work order for the rest of the quantity ordered. These drill down and flatten deal with the indented bill of materials. Drill down is where you want to create a work order for the sub-assemblies. Flatten is where you want to eliminate the sub-assembly structure in the work order. The batch quantity makes it easy to enter your quantity per, if you're instead of using a unitary. And then the BoM revisions is something that where you can keep revisions or have different bill of materials for different purposes, one for disassembly, one for assembly. And a production order groups, you can using the BoM group a series of disassemblies and work orders together to produce at the end of the day something at the end.
All right, we have some questions in here. Is there a way to sort all the work orders by priority of what must be completed first, so we know in what order to produce the work orders?
Is there a way to do like a priorities in terms of work orders?
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the production order or just general question?
It's a general question, but he could probably use a production order to actually prioritize work orders for a single product.
Yeah, that's right. We went through some of the work order, and it's hard to kind of answer that question, but obviously the work order number is incremental, right? So you can sort by the work order number. We also have the promise dates. All right, so that's another sortation mechanism. If you want, you can also create a custom field for priority. Very simple, 1, 2, 3 type of custom field and use it like that. So really there are three mechanisms that you can use simply to prioritize your bills of materials. I prefer the promise date.
When we created BoMs in the past, we didn't have the batch quantity feature because it's newer. Now we can enable that feature in the preferences and modify existing BoMs without any issues.
No. I mean, if you recall, it will have. You will need to. And I know who's asking that question, and I can probably work with them on the back end. But you have to be careful when you do the. When did I turn that off? Let me turn that back on.
Yeah, can they turn it on and then make a revision of the BoM that they currently have, and then add a batch quantity?
Let me just hold on one sec. Let me just put on the batch quantity here. Features, right, so we could, so I can demonstrate that. All right, so recall this item over here had a batch quantity of 100. Okay. The background, we're calculating a unitary value. If I change the batch quantity, it's in the background, it's going to change the unitary value. You see how now? The quantity per hasn't changed, but in the background, the unitary value does change. So it's not what we need to do really is add a batch quantity and in the background multiplies all the quantity per. We probably need to do that, with some kind. I think maybe we can do it with an import, and then it wouldn't affect the batch quantities. I have to take a look at that.
Yeah, because basically it's not just the batch quantity that has to change; it's the quantity per for each component. So
yeah, well, in the background, but I think if we just do it on the header, like right now we're in the interface, so it's actually every time I change this, there's something that's going on in the background. But I think if we only change the top level, that might be possible where everything else would stick. I can run a test on that. Maybe we can yeah. But you don't want to just change because it will change the proportions. So be careful if you do that. Yep.
The next question was with the BoM groups, with the production orders, the series of work orders are tied together in a logical sequence to produce a final good.
Yep.
And the order you put them in that list, that's the order that they execute basically. So if you did a disassembly first and then work order,
yes,
it would just go.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes, exactly. Now I have it set up here, but the best column is probably the ID column. This is the correct order. See that?
Okay. So it goes in order of the ID. So it's do 343, 344.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And the example he was showing too is a soap example where they actually take a batch, they disassemble it into bars, and then they do something to it, and then it's the final product. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the examples for how a production order can be used.
Yeah, how we demoed it for one, someone that was creating a bar of soap, and that bar of soap can go into a number of different soaps. They just add, I guess they cut it and they add something to a packaging.
Mm-hmm. And the next question was, when we use reorder analysis for work orders, it spawns a large number of work orders. We must open each one to cause it to drill down. Once we do this, we have even more work orders. Can they be sorted by the required production order? That was the first question. Some items must be made before others. All work orders for a particular item would be produced at the same time. So the question was, can they be sorted by the required production order?
Well, if you're creating work orders, and for each one you need to drill down, but there are commonality with that. There's commonality. In other words, for example, I have two bills of materials that both use the same subassembly, and if you drill down, you'll create two work orders. So really, what you want to do is you want to kind of recursively use the reorder analysis again, based on required or deficiency, and that way it'll group those subassemblies into one work order.
We might be able to do a webinar just on reorder analysis again, some of the other uses with work orders.
Yeah. So there's a question: what's the difference between a
production order versus a work order, and how are they mostly used?
Right. So a production order is like a group of work orders together, and the idea behind the work order or production order is to group, logically, some work orders and disassemblies together.
Ian, I think something happened with your microphone.
Good?
Yeah, you're fixed now. Okay. So you're saying a production order is basically a grouping of work orders done in sequence or disassemblies.
Right. As opposed to one of the, so some companies have like a series of things that they need to do to get, at the end of the day, to get to what where the end product is, right? So they would want to create a BoM group that kind of does that together, and in one shot I can create all the work orders together. So a production order is kind of a grouping of work orders and disassemblies together.
Yeah, in a sequence.
Can
you reference a purchase order or a production order somehow back to a master work order? Do you mean purchase order or production order?
I think what they're saying is that if you have a sales order and you're kind of a make to order environment, like a customer PO, like that, and what you can do, and let's say I want to create one of those, or whatever, 10 of those. So this is a customer PO, this is a sales order. I can approve that, and I can create what's called a linked work order. I created one of them. So now I have a kind of a dependency structure here. That the work order references the sales order. Okay? And back.
And this is being recorded too, so you can reference back to this. I think we have an article on linked work orders also, which I'll give in the notes email that I'm going to send out after this.
Now, if you do have, let's say one of the components on the work order needs to be ordered as well. So the same thing. From here, you can create what's called a linked PO. And let's say I want to purchase that one. So now in my work order, I have a reference to the purchase order as well. Let me just clean this. I'm touching my stuff. So there's my purchase order. Okay.
So whenever your users use a purchase order, work order, they can click on the dependency tab and see what's linked with it, and it
That's
references back.
That's right. Exactly right.
Are there any other questions? I think we're over time by about 7 minutes, so if you want to get in a question real quick.
We're good?
Looks like we're good, yeah.
Alrighty. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Looks like we should probably do a reorder analysis next time for purchasing and production. And there's some real neat tricks that you can do reorder analysis from the purchasing standpoint. Can drill through now all the sub-assemblies in a work order too. So I'm going to demonstrate that as well next time.
Yeah, we'll set that up for the next webinar, and I'll be sending out an email directly after this with notes on everything he went over, and there's like 6 articles that you can reference individually for like splitting, drill down, flatten, everything like that he went over, so you can look at it on your own too.
All right.
And that's
That's it.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, bye.